Okay, David, take it away.
Welcome. We're going to be walking down memory lane with the 5 past executive directors of LifeQuest and its previous incarnation. I'm David Miller, moderator, and you will see that we have all 5 people on hand here, along with the approximate hours, or rather years, during which they served. And I'm going to be asking a lot of questions, and any one of them is willing to answer, and we would certainly like to hear them answer. Occasionally, I will direct a question to one individual. And in order to start off, I'd like to ask Nancy Weber, and perhaps you can pass this on to her, to tell us about the very first years. How did LifeQuest or its predecessor organization first get started?
Okay. Jay Jernigan was a member of Second Presbyterian Church and attended a conference in Kansas City on aging, where the first Shepherd Center was organized in Kansas City. Jay brought the concept back to Second Pres. He organized a board of directors and they hired me. He deserves lots of credit for the success of Shepherd Center, which was the forerunner of LifeQuest. On the first day, we had 85 participants, and 10 years later, we had over 600. I was the only employee for the first 5 years, and then was fortunate enough to hire computer whiz Jane Gordon, who was so very, very talented. I think it's interesting. The fee was $4 a semester for a full day of classes on Wednesdays. And Evelina Berry was my mentor, and she was also the chairman of the Adventures in Learning Committee. Our wonderful volunteers just did it all. They were fantastic.
Well, that is an amazing start. And the price, of course, was very attractive in those days. Let me see. After Nancy, Kathy, you came on the scene just a little bit after Nancy, correct?
That's right. I followed her fairly closely. She'd even left a pair of yellow canvas duck shoes in my desk drawer that she said she wore every morning before Adventures in Learning so that she could make the rounds and put up the signs all over Second Presbyterian Church. So I enjoyed finding her duck shoes.
Was that a time of even additional growth in terms of the number of participants in the program?
It actually did grow to 640 is the number that I remember as the top number during the years I was there. One of the major ways that we changed was that Jane Gordon, our office manager and business manager, helped us get a grant and move from a PC Junior computer to a Mac for the first time. And as we began to take advantage of Jane's skills with the computer, we were able to track many more things, keep much better, easier track of everything that was going on through the Shepherd Center and all the programs that existed with it.
And how about the number of programs? I presume that they grew as each year went by, but give us a sense of how many different offerings there were back in those days. We're talking the mid 1990s.
Are we talking about programs that were part of Adventures in Learning, or the kinds
yes.
of things that Shepherd Center offered?
Explain the distinction there. I'm thinking about the number of courses that are offered, but
Right. In the early years, there were a number of different programs in addition to Adventures in Learning that included things like transportation to medical appointments, and our volunteers were people who then helped other people. So it was a way for older adults to give to others in addition. So we had the rides to the doctor, we had a handyman service. If somebody needed a light bulb changed or other kinds of small home tasks, there were people who took care of that. There may have even been some ladies who were willing to sew a button on if needed. But there were, it was an attempt to provide lots of different opportunities for older adults to be of service to somebody else in addition to the day that they got to come and participate in Adventures in Learning.
all
Meals
right.
on Wheels was another program that our
Oh, yes.
volunteers assisted with.
Uh-huh. And give us a sense of how many different offerings were available in those days in terms of classroom activities.
Nancy, you can chime in here because I'm not sure how much it grew while I was there, but it seems like there were probably about 12 different classes by the time you spread it on across 3 or 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hearing you well. Sorry.
All right, and then moving on from there, Jan, you were executive director for what must have been 12 years or so, correct? Yes, and you are muted, I think. At least I didn't hear
Good point. Thank you. Yes,
Yes.
about 12 years.
12 years, all right. Describe for us the growth, I presume growth, that
Yeah.
took place during that time period.
Yes, I think we were beginning to see the beginning of the baby boomer generation starting to retire. So we were definitely becoming a growth industry. And classes filled up completely on Wednesdays, and then we spilled over into Thursdays. And of course, that's when computers were becoming much more common. And many of our members did not have those computers in their offices when they were working. So we had computer classes, and it just started to mushroom.
Mm-hmm. And let's see, we pick up then with Ann Leek in 2008. Describe for us what kind of growth took place during the years that you were executive director.
Well, I don't have to remind anyone what 2008 was like for our economy. It was kind of a rough time for nonprofits and everyone else as well. At that time, we actually were in 2 locations. I think, Jan, you were the one who established the office over off of whatever the name of the street is. Yes, 12th Street. And some classes were being offered over there. Emily and I actually got acquainted when we both worked together at the 12th Street office. That's where we got started. So we had to do some dollar pinching in 2008, but the classes continued to do well at Second Presbyterian Church, our anchor location. But ultimately, we did have to move out of the 12th Street location and consolidate back at Pleasant Valley Drive. So,
Excuse me, Ann, for interrupting, but I was just going to remind people, the church at one point did some renovation, so we had to move out at some point. And we went to the Koger Center initially, briefly, And then we end up at the Neighborhood Resource Center, which is what Anne's talking about.
And then to add on to what Jan was saying about the baby boomers, we really began to see that. Emily left for a short time, then she was back, and we just began to notice that it wasn't as hard to recruit instructors. Baby boomer professors and others of all walks of life were retiring and walking in the LifeQuest office saying, I have an idea for a course and I'll teach it. So instead of it being quite a hunt, as it could be at times, it began to be, oh my goodness, how are we going to schedule all these people in this next term? It was a really nice problem to have.
But you had help, both volunteer help, didn't you, as well as the staff?
Oh, absolutely. They were the mainstays all the way through. The board has always been a strong source of leadership. The Adventures in Learning Committee did nothing but just strengthen and strengthen. And I'm sure Emily will add on to that. We were thrilled with all the different places people came from outside of the city of Little Rock and all of the different types of classes. I think we were up to about 40 different course offerings in an 8-week term during those years.
When did I guess maybe you've already mentioned when the Thursday sessions began.
They were already there when I got there.
They were all there, yes, okay, yeah.
One thing that was funny to me was we offered probably one of the first classes for students to learn about their smartphones.
Oh,
Verizon came and did a summer course for us, and they tried to screen everyone in advance to know what sort of a smartphone they had so they could break the groups out appropriately. It was really funny because about 50 people showed up and probably about 15 of them knew what kind of phone they really had. So it was fun and interesting. And I think they learned a lot, and I know Verizon learned a lot.
Emily, tell us something about the 8 years that you were, no, 4 years. You're 4 years. Go ahead.
Well, I actually started when Jan was executive director as the director of development.
That's right.
So I was at LifeQuest in a different position. I was there for a couple of years, and then I left and went and did some other things, and then came back as the volunteer coordinator, I believe. And then I've done a little bit of everything at LifeQuest, a little bit of all the positions. So when Anne decided she was going to retire, she asked me about the executive director position, and I was up for it. So y'all set me up for success, that's for sure. Anne's right. People are lining up at the door to teach classes, and it just continues to grow.
As you look back on it, what would you say was the most, say, remarkable thing about what happened with LifeQuest during your reign?
Gosh, I don't know. It was just the energy and the buy-in and the people wanting to teach and the variety of topics. I know when Anne was there also, and I'm sure this started before this, but we started to see a lot more men attending LifeQuest because of the kind of the topics we were offering, a lot more history and things like that. We merged with Internet, which offers digital classes. So we went beyond the smartphone and offered all kinds of technical classes while I was there. And I think at one point we were 800 participants during a fall term. We were nervous about where.
That's interesting. So are you saying that in the early years, it was primarily female participation? I wasn't aware of that. Is that true?
Nancy and y'all speak to that. It was heavy on the women side. Is that true?
It was
I-
mostly women, and finally, some of them started bringing their spouses, and they realized, like most men, it takes a while, and they realized that they could have a good time there. So they started coming. I have one thing that I want to share. I think my best memory was the day I got a call from a professor from Hendrix who had taught a class for us. And he asked me, he said, "Why have you not called and asked me to come back to teach again?" Well, I was just floored. I said, "I didn't know that you could take off, and come back and teach. We'd love to have you come back." And he said, "Well, I love to teach there because the students are there because they want to continue to learn, not like my students at Hendrix." And that was the biggest compliment I think we've ever gotten. So that was
I heard that all the time, all the
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my favorite classes that went on before the baby boomers arrived was that we offered several sessions of World War II memories. And that was a huge draw for many of the men in our group who finally felt like they had a place where they could share with other men who had similar experiences. It was a very positive class that was offered.
Mhm. Well, I'm interested to hear about that class. Are there any other classes that stand out in any of your minds as being somewhat different or intriguing?
My group loved travelogues, and I don't know that they continued that, but Olga and Carl Frick were wonderful volunteers. And at first, they put up, I helped them hang those plastic blinds we hung in the chapel to make it dark enough to show on a small movie screen. Well, of course, we very quickly outgrew the chapel, and we moved to the Great Hall. And one day at noon, in front of 350 people eating lunch, I asked if they would like to volunteer to donate money to the church so that we could buy a pull down, full size movie screen. And I'm not a fundraiser. And after the session, that lunch was over, a lady walked up to me and said, "Don't say one word, but I'm giving you a check for $1,000 toward buying the." So that changed I never liked to fundraise and did not, but I felt like I was really a fundraiser that day. So it was good. So that movie screen's still up there.
Very, very good.
One of the classes that I got some very interesting comments on was the calligraphy class that we used to offer. And back when Nancy was there and when I was there, our name tags were hand calligraphied by Shepherd Center members who had taken that class. And there was a 90-year-old gentleman one day that I was visiting with, and I said, "Tell me why you've chosen to take calligraphy." And he said, "It has made all the difference in making my own signature legible again."
Yeah.
So it was a matter of the structure and the form of doing calligraphy that gave him better control over his handwriting.
Interesting. Are there any other courses that stand out in your mind as being particularly productive or popular?
Well, we were always interested in what the group of attorneys and judges were going to do each 8-week term. Dick Williams and a number of his cronies, Fred Ursery, just a whole slew of them, surprised us every 8-week term with what their theme was going to be and who was going to do what.
Has that continued?
Oh, go ahead.
Emily. Yes.
I was just going to say there's so many, what I like to call anchor classes. I know I have an echo, sorry, but there were classes that happened almost every term, and they would always pull people in. The instructors would start to have their own groupings, their own followers. And David, you're one of those. Singing Down the Lane was one of those.
That's right.
Yeah, John Brummett, of course. You know, the last, when I was there, Alan Eastham, who's a retired Hendricks professor and youth ambassador. I mean, they're so committed to teach almost every term, and people continue to show up every term to hear them speak. So that's what's really special. And David, you're one of those people.
Well, thank you for that.
That's right.
Jan, we've talked about the successes, and there's no doubt that LifeQuest has been a successful operation, but can you think of any particular challenges that you faced or things that needed to be addressed that you hadn't really anticipated? Anything come to mind there?
Well, it was probably a healthy and natural challenge, but fundraising really became a huge focus because we were growing so, and what we were asking people to pay for per semester didn't cover all of our expenses. So we really had to get out there. But in a way, it was good because it expanded our network into the community. It allowed us to diversify. It allowed us to talk with more congregations that were interested. Mm-hmm. I think at one point we had something like 36 congregations that were involved with LifeQuest. So it sort of pushed us out there. I remember I joined a Rotary Club and got to, talk to a lot of people about LifeQuest with that group. So fundraising was just a new aspect of LifeQuest that I think wasn't there as much before.
Well, as we look back over the 40 years, that's amazing to me, has the composition of the participants changed other than I've learned about male versus female? But how about in terms of age? Is there any indication that younger people are getting more involved? What has been the pattern as far as you can discern in that respect?
Well, we used to analyze that every 8 weeks.
Oh.
Gender, age group, and at the time I retired, the average age was 72.
Okay.
I don't remember the breakout other than that, but that was the average age. So Emily, was it beginning to change?
Maybe a little bit at new member orientation. I would note that there were a few people there who were newly retired. I know we had some people in their 50s, but I think the average age still stayed around 70. And of course, went up during one of our fall terms. Our youngest participant was 52, and our oldest participant was 102. So that was the age range during one of our fall terms. It was pretty neat to see that.
I want to ask all of you as a kind of a final follow-up question. What do you see in the future? I would say 10 years from now, 50th anniversary. What do you think will be different at that time? Anybody at all, or everybody? Let me hear.
I know they've had to move to the virtual world. With COVID-19, they've already started offering online classes, and that's something that's needed to happen for a while. We've all talked about it. Some of us have taken it on, and it's a big project, and I'm really proud of the team that's there now and how they've done it.
Yes.
But I do think that the in-person part of LifeQuest is the social connection is almost as important as the educational component. So I don't think the in-person aspect will ever go away, but I do think that online classes will continue. And I think that will allow LifeQuest to reach more people in the community. The people who can't get out anymore and go to class could still connect, still learn. The classes could be taken into retirement communities or nursing homes. So I can't speak for the LifeQuest team, but I do know the ladies pretty well, and I know that they're forward thinking like that. So I think that's what we'll see.
Interesting. Anyone want to add to that or argue with it?
I do
Kathy,
think that virtual classes will continue and will meet some needs, but that face-to-face contact for so many older adults who live alone, I think will continue to be an important part of what LifeQuest offers.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else with a perspective on that question?
Well, when I was there, we did with Charlie Crow, you all may remember, the Third Age Initiative. And I just thought that was so incredible, where all this wisdom and experience could be offered to the community to resolve and create, resolve issues and create new programs that would help that. And so I was very sad when that program sort of came to a close. And I think that was because of 2008, the funding was so tough and the times were tough. But anyway, I'm hopeful that maybe someday something like that could resurrect, because I just think LifeQuest members have so much to offer the community.
All right. Anyone else? Well,
I have something off topic, Dave. A little off topic. I wanted to bring up, you asked Jan about one of her biggest challenges when she was in her position. I know this is true for me and Ann, traffic control.
Yes.
One of my biggest challenges. But with that in mind, I also wanted to mention Second Presbyterian Church, and I know we all know how important their role is in LifeQuest and its success. And they put up with us every Wednesday, Thursday, and every other day of the week. And so I know we're all grateful for them in that relationship.
Thank you for bringing that up, Emily, because I don't think it could have happened without that facility and their willingness and support for all these 40 years.
True.
well, that's a good uplifting way to finish our conversation. I want to thank you all for getting together. And why don't we do it again 10 years from now, okay?
Sounds good.
See what I remember in another 10 years.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Pleasure to see you all.